these uniformed troops running around up there in
Now.
Canada, and other people
So you
reporting
can
that
already
there's
see it on
activity
that
south of the
computer then.
border in Mexico,
Aren't you
like out in the
paranoid?
desert type
No,
thing.
I'm not paranoid. Hey, by the way, the guy
It
lives
really
blah
kind of
blah
puts a
blah.
new,
You're talking about me.
kind of
That's what you would.
perspective on people's works. Okay, so you
I don't
got
live
these
here, you know. I
Chinese
can
troops
say
built up.
whatever I want. I just go
You
It's
live on
on.
the
almost like they
internet.
were put there as part of
I
the
know.
Shakespearean
Right, I'm
novel.
ready.
Because the hell if
Yeah,
Trump
ready.
was going to hit this landslide,
Where's the gift?
why
Perfect.
were the Chinese going to attack us
How
then
sweet, how
during the
sweet.
civil unrest? I mean,
If
there's
you
a
need
lot
a
of
friend,
things
you
here
can
that
choose
could
your
really
own.
play out.
What the hell?
The gift.
Can get clip 5 ready. Now this was I was listening to True
Yeah, there's-
News
there's-
earlier.
stop drooling.
This was
There's
yesterday's
traps in
True
there.
News, and they go back to an old Bill Maher clip where he has
No, stickers.
a lieutenant colonel.
Actually, that could come in handy. Thanks.
I believe it was a lieutenant colonel on. This was way back in August. And this guy's not some, just nobody. He worked for somebody real big and one of the generals, and he had taught classes at universities and so forth and so on. But he talked about patriots taking up arms in support of Trump, and then the need for the military to possibly have to take care of the situation. Let's roll clip 5.
A difference, but let's play this clip from last night on Tucker Carlson.
I think what we have, do we have the Tucker Carlson or do we have the actual?
We have the Tucker Carlson clip with the Lawrence Wilkerson, Bill Maher.
And that interview with Bill Maher was actually back in the summer.
Right back about the first week of August. Sorry.
Here it is.
This summer, John Podesta played Joe Biden in an election simulation the Democrats held. In that simulation, according to reports, Podesta, quote, wanted to see what the military would do if Donald Trump refused to accept the election results. The military? So what exactly would the military do? It's shocking even to think about something like that. But others have thought about it. This summer, a retired Army colonel called Lawrence Wilkinson went on the Bill Maher show on HBO to discuss that question. As you watch the clip we're about to show you, keep in mind that Wilkerson is not a fringe figure. He's not some guy muttering to himself on a city bus. Wilkerson was once chief of staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell. Look him up. He's a famous man. He since taught courses at a couple of famous universities. Here's what Wilkerson said.
If Trump calls his base to the streets with their guns, his base owns something like 60 to 70% of the 300, 400 million guns in America. If they answer that call and come to the streets with guns, then we probably are going to have a need for the military. And then all bets are off as to how much blood might flow.
How much blood might flow? So here you have one of the people who brought you the war in Iraq fantasizing out loud about killing even more civilians, in this case, American citizens, Trump voters, in the streets of our cities. People didn't used to talk like this on television, and on Fox News, they still don't because we wouldn't allow it. That's violent extremism. But on that channel, no problem. No one even noticed that. Tells you a lot about how they think.
Now, even though that clip was from back the first week of summer, I remember we happened to see that particular clip back in the summer. How far out of your mind was it then that you could even contemplate Trump supporters, coming to arms in reaction to everything that's going on? Now it's not so far-fetched, is it?
No, I actually contemplated last year. Go back and look at how many times Right-Wing Watch misconstrued my words and made it look like I said we got to go out into the streets and
advocate for
shoot it up.
war.
When
All right, go ahead. Stop
Right-Wing
it.
Watch knows.
Just fascinating how all this is coming, the synchronicity of all this. And it gives a lot of people kind of an artificial plastic feel. Okay. And I can understand it. Everybody's talking about the battle for the Republic now. And it's time to, everybody's talking about get out in the streets and et cetera, et cetera. Here's Jim Stone. I'm going to say it like it is. If you run a forum, blog, or anything else, and you're encouraging nonviolence this time, you're a piece of shit. Okay, you're a piece of crap because rather than stick your neck out, he'd rather encourage people to sit by peacefully while the communists take over and bury the next genocide in the COVID stats. So he's saying, and talking about this with the COVID, we've kind of talked about the ability to disappear people and so forth and so on and bury it in COVID stats. And very fascinating. That's where we're headed if we sit by passively and let them take this country via fraud straight into the COVID stats, just like dissidents in China. Those encouraging nonviolence are pieces of crap, because while you post all about the hammer and how it is every Trump supporter flag bagged and tagged for extermination, you still say, no violence discussed here, please. Oh, I'm worried about my ass. Question, is that how we're going to avoid getting genocided? By worrying about where our asses end up? Can you avoid getting your nation stolen in the subsequent communist genocide by sitting around talking about how bad it is to use violence to put things right? What patriot ever put things right by worrying about his own behind? Certainly not you, if you tell everybody to shut up about it. Anyone who encourages peaceful protest rather than putting things right at this point in history is just marching lemmings off a cliff. And that's Jim Stone saying that. And that's one, internet blogger, investigator, whatever you want to. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and cower away from reality. If I lose my behind over saying it like it is, if I get carted off for this, one thing is certain: on my way out, I won't be the only one gone. The other side will take losses, and that's how the tree of liberty gets watered. At this point in history, that particular tree is so parched, it's been reduced to stubble. Okay. So, Steve Bannon, okay, who testified against Roger Stone, so forth and so on. Now he's been purged, excuse me, just off about everything now due to his calling for the beheading of Fauci and Christopher Wray, the FBI director. I heard it on somebody's program. I was kind of digging around for it, but so Bannon is an interesting character. Naval intelligence guy, Goldman Sachs guy, kind of entertainment, industry guy. He stole the name War Room from Owen Schroyer over at InfoWars and started his own War Room show, Pandemic. And then he just comes out of the blue and talks about beheading Fauci and Ray. And look, after using the Robespierre French Revolution kind of lingo, when all these guillotines have already been set up by Antifa types outside of Bezos' house, they're cutting, dummy Trump's heads off, and all this guillotine, idea. Now you got Bannon talking about beheading a couple prominent figures in the government. Kind of interesting. Kathy Griffin reposts her, picture of the Trump dummy, beheaded Trump dummy. It gets to stay. Whereas people talking about, the stuff about, the elections and so forth, Benford's Law, you're going to get censored, but you can have a picture of the president, a knockoff picture of the president with his head decapitated, and that stays. And so now let's get into the Pachenik stuff with the watermark kind of stuff, because Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer kind of mirrored Pachenik's talk. Okay, now Ken, get clip 3 going. Get that ready. Now this is Owen Schroyer. The clip they had it on band.video, 4 million views. Okay, as of earlier this morning or whatever. And now I couldn't find it. I had to find it on another video clip. So that one got disappeared down the rabbit hole for some reason. Maybe the folks over at InfoWars are slightly uneasy about Pachinik dropping this kind of bomb on them, and then it gets 4 million views, and then everybody's talking about it, and all the alternative media are poo-pooing the idea, and so forth. So very interesting. But I'll let you guys listen to Pachinik real quick. Go ahead and roll 3.
Let's roll the clip.
This is really a sting operation. Contrary to what everybody else said, Trump knew this was happening. Eric knew this was happening and warned the public. I knew this was happening. However, I could not say anything about it. What happened was we watermarked every ballot with what's called the QFS blockchain encryption code. In other words, we know pretty well where every ballot is, where it went, and who has it. So this is not a stolen election. On the contrary, we reversed the entire game of war along the lines of Sun Tzu, the art of war. And Trump was brilliant and still is brilliant at it. The reason he hasn't been seen, and Alex correctly said, I haven't seen him in several days. Well, in the art of the war, you pull back, allow your enemy to make all the mistakes that they are making, manipulate the situation, expose them, and then come in for the final killing. And that's what's happening now. None of this was unexpected. All of this was expected. All of this is part of the sting operation we're running.
Okay, so you heard that. That was
Okay, you
Dr.
can
Steve
stop it there.
Pachinik.
Okay. Now I was digging around some other sites, and they're all over the place with this stuff. Now, remember Millie Weaver that we covered I don't know how many weeks ago, it was now back, where she did the documentary. I played parts of it here on the broadcast, where then she gets basically raided, arrested, charged, and all this strange stuff. Okay. What was that called? Shadowgate? Yes, like Shadowgate. Anyway, one of her people that she interviewed in the movie, there was 2 people, like kind of intelligence operatives or former intelligence operatives. The female was named Tori. Okay, she's got her own YouTube channel, and all you guys, I'm sure some of you guys know who that is. She's basically dropping all this stuff now that the quote-unquote Space Force, okay, can track these these kind of marked ballots from space and all this other kind of interesting stuff. But anyway, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer. Now, this was on Gateway Pundit a couple days ago. So he's Tony Schaefer, retired intelligence operative and current president of the London Center for Policy Research and a member of President Trump 2020 Advisory Board. He believes the president won the election, has a great cause in the case in the courts to prove it. He created a fire on Twitter yesterday when he questioned whether the president may have marked all the ballots in this year's election, which would indicate if a ballot counted was legitimate or not. Okay? A hypothetical question for all the Democrat trolls following my feed. What if DHS anticipated DNC counting fraud? What if they tagged each legitimate ballot? What would happen if DHS does an audit of all counted ballots and find ballots without the tag? What happens then? And that was on November 5th. It's done in known contracted sites. Do you understand? Law enforcement asks for cooperation all the time from companies, right? And somebody was asking whether ballot production was done locally. A third tweet from Schaefer indicated there are numerous ways to mark documents without the markings being clearly identifiable. Oh, there's more than that now. People don't understand how light works, and what they don't see can be seen in infrared and ultraviolet. We had a whole block of instruction at the farm on secret writing. It's amazing. This caused an uproar on Twitter, and liberals freaked out thinking they might have got caught in their attempt to steal this year's election. Hence, maybe why you see the spike in searches about penalties for election fraud. Okay? Now, a personal story. I was out at a drinking establishment on Friday, and I was talking to an individual that worked for a company, I'll just put it that sells printers and this sort of thing. Okay, their company had been subpoenaed because somehow the printers this company deals with were used in printing ballots, evidently. And so this is just a personal kind of weird story, but their company had been subpoenaed for information about, I guess, the inner workings of the printers, et cetera, et cetera. And then I didn't think about it until, later on. I'm like, that is very fascinating, due to all this kind of whole printer game, with QFS codes, blockchain, whatever you want to call this stuff. We're coming up on break. Let's see here. Tariq Nasheed. I thought this was interesting. Now, he's like this kind of black, very pro-black, hardcore leftists. Even leftists are speaking out. Everybody knows far-left Democrats and corrupt Joe Biden are trying to steal the election. Rapper producer Tariq Nasheed can see the steal. He tweeted, "Come on, son," in regards to the obvious lie the Democrats are attempting to claim, and Biden had more votes than Obama in 2008 and beat President Trump in the election. Nasheed tweeted, "I ain't no Trump supporter by any stretch of the imagination, but all these millions of magic mail-in votes popping up for Biden, ... Okay? In battleground states, Biden's base is not suburban voters. Reports are saying that these magical mail-in votes are coming from these black-populated urban centers. Here's the thing, black Americans don't rock with Biden like that. So what base group are these votes coming from?" We'll see you guys on the other side of the break.
Hey gang, Patrick Slattery here with an important message that is pertinent to anyone who shops for groceries, eats food, or just has an inquisitive mind like myself. What I'm about to introduce you to is a segment of our food culture that has been kept so low profile for the American public that virtually no one is aware of how dominant it is on our refrigerator and cupboard shelves. What I'm talking about is the kosher certification industry and a new app, Koshertify, that delivers a comprehensive education on all aspects regarding this little-known practice. After reviewing this app, I found that it is useful for practically anyone who purchases food, regardless of their religious faith or identity. Its database of products not kosher certified is a win-win convenience for all food-conscious people. So why not check out the kosherquestion.com or click on the link at nationalbugle.com and see how modifying your grocery shopping with the Koshertified app can make a huge difference for your future.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
So back to Tariq Nasheed, we got to keep it a buck, basically 100%. How's Biden winning all these states with record numbers of votes? Yet the GOP kept all the Senate and House seats. I would believe millions of people who voted for Biden voted down ballot Republican. And then this coincides with Sidney Powell talking about 450,000 votes that they're talking about that only had a vote for Biden. Didn't vote for anybody else on the ticket, just for Bo and Joe. I mean, it's fascinating to watch all this go down. Craziest stuff ever. Back to the this kid, okay? Self-described Democratic Party worker, Detroit resident, brags on Facebook. I work for Wayne County, Michigan, and I threw out every Trump ballot I saw, tens of thousands of them, and so did all my coworkers. It's crazy. Trump campaign witness saw Biden-Harris fans stop at Las Vegas, Nevada Center and unload and fill in boxes of ballots. I mean, it's, you know, it's like, it's almost like too blatant. It's too foolish. It's too buffoonish, you know? And that's why, you know, you got to lean towards that whole thing where this is maybe being set up. And so while you've got the, mayors allowing riots in their own cities, prosecutors giving aid and comfort to seditious insurgents by releasing them from jail, bail project, we talk about that. Corrupt police commanders ordering patrol officers not to enforce existing law. Corrupt governors refusing to escalate law enforcement with state police and lawless cities. Media falsely portraying violent, riots as peaceful protests. Trump sitting here, he gives his press conference the other day and they cut away. Lester Holt, these people like on various networks, they cut away like, well, Trump's lying, so we're not going to cover this anymore. Universities accepting billions of dollars from foreign governments, laundered through foreign students to study the domination of popular culture. It's craziness. And I was talking to somebody offline, but basically here's I kind of simplified it down to this. Okay, let's say Biden's chosen and Trump's efforts go nowhere and Biden gets the nod and he gets inaugurated on January 20th. So what we can prepare for with that is the crushing of what's left of the United States, gulags, capitulate to the Jicons, forced vaccinations, the whole nine, righties through. They let Trump win this thing, and then war. Taking us to war, it's got to be Trump. If they're going to collapse us internally, let Red Dawn kind of scenario play out, and we go into nightmare gulag, red terror, gulag archipelago, Solzhenitsyn type stuff. It's going to be Biden. It's kind of like what I see it now. Now, this could happen under Trump. We got warp speed going down. This remains to be seen. Think about this. Right now, it's kind of a down. People are feeling real low about everything. They're saying, what's the point of paying my taxes? What's the point of even supporting this system anymore when they're just going to blatantly steal this thing? So you've got a real collapse of any kind of confidence in the system, these blue city banana republics especially. And so there's a lot of people stuck in these cities and counties. I'm one of them that they're looking at it like, why should I pay my property tax Why should I pay my real estate tax this year to a system that's you're plotting and scheming against me and is going to rip me off my, your vote and so forth and so on? Are they getting people? Are they solidifying the resolve of your traditional Americana types right now by putting them through kind of a crucible with their own soul, this turmoil? Are they kind of getting people to confront some things in their own soul, to put their big boy pants on? Are they ready? Are they almost purposely putting us through this crucible, this turmoil, to almost eke out a new ruthlessness, almost a militant mindset to purge your empathy and sympathy from our spirits, because we see the blatant criminality, and therefore, it's almost like going medieval. And is this part of the psyop? Okay. So the patriot right wing becomes uber ruthless, and what these left wing mayors and the police chiefs and look what New York PD. Okay, got a lot of officers in the New York PD. You got 8 million people living in New York City. If this thing goes real retarded, you're going to see, who knows what's going to happen to some of these cities, whether they're just going to put a perimeter around them, like we've talked about the freeway system, the highway system, whatever you want to call it, these rings around these big cities to basically enforce a perimeter, and anybody stuck inside, it's almost like Escape from New York. It's hard to say. Ken, get clip 2 ready. Now, just to give some balanced perspective on the whole ballot marking thing, David Knight ain't buying it over there on InfoWars. And he's basically, I think David Knight would make a great president of the United States. As far as just knowledge, constitutional principles, liberty principles, all that stuff, economic, engineering, science, the guy's just smart, and he's like really grounded in the founding fathers level mentality. But let's roll clip 2. Let's see what he thinks of that whole thing.
To me, if this was a sting, it doesn't even make any sense. It's another one of these deals like the laptop with Hunter Biden. They waited to the very last minute to put that thing out thinking it was going to be a surprise. And then everybody just said, well, that's not credible. The media is going to put out the narrative that's not credible. It doesn't matter if you got documents. It doesn't matter if you got photographic evidence. You can have all the documentation that you want in the world, and they're not going to believe it because the mainstream media and social media are going to censor you, and they're going to put out their narrative. So I don't see that's going to do anything other than to create a forest fire of chaos. And instead of lighting more forest fires, why wouldn't you put out the primary forest fire, which was the lockdown? And you could have taken out this corruption with credibility if you had taken on Fauci and exposed his corruption. At that point, it would have been the Russiagate, it would have been the Fauci takeover and lockdown, and people would have believed this. But instead, we're supposed to believe there's some kind of Machiavellian secret plan that we should just trust while the U.S. burns in chaos. Maybe that is ultimately the plan. Look, I didn't jump into Pizzagate. I don't allow Pachinik to come on this show because the last time he came on this show was right after the shooting in Vegas. He came on this show to sell the lie that nobody died in Vegas because he's trying to trap me. This guy is a CIA shill, and he comes on to trap us. That's one of the ways that they discredit you. I'm not having anything to do with that. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of things. Not just one thing that's happening. Things happening. We got a rigged election, but we've had a lockdown. We've had 100,000 businesses being driven out of business. We've had a communist system of universal basic income imposed on us and everything else. We're going to be talking to Richard Proctor coming up. Before we get to Richard, I just want to finish up one thing I ran out of time on. I'll tell you exactly why I think this election is running this way. Here's my conspiracy theory. It's just a theory. This is my conspiracy theory. I think that the deep state, the CIA, the entrenched government, whatever you want to call it, I think that the plan has been for the longest time, if they really want to control finally and fully the elections, they're going to do it electronically. That's why I was predicting that they were going to do an electronic election this time. They've already set up the post office to be, they've got a blockchain process run by the post office to run an electronic election. They didn't roll it out this time. And I really did think at the beginning of this lockdown that that was going to be the plan. They were going to lock everybody down, make you work and go to school through your little internet portal, make you vote through your internet portal. So why didn't they do it this time? That was the thing that surprised me. I think they did it because they want this chaos. They want this to run a long time, and they want you to beg for electronic elections. I think that's why we're seeing this being done. I think that's why we're being fed stories about trust the plan. This is all just a sting operation. Yeah, it is a sting operation, and the con is being run on you. They're going to get you begging for an electronic voting, and we have seen this being used. The easiest way to keep a dictator in office. I've talked about this in Venezuela, Smartmatic and Hugo Chavez and his friends who set this up. They can rig every single election across the country. They can go from president to dog catcher, and they can rig everything, and they can do it very, very easily from a central location, like the CIA or something. That's my conspiracy theory. They want to beg you, they want to get you begging for a trustworthy electronic voting system.
I think it's not in there. So interesting perspectives there. So somebody writes this. Where's it at? There was quartzqz.com, and this guy who wrote this article got kind of thrown under the bus. Tim McDonald. What happens if a president-elect dies before inauguration? So there's already people talking about the pandemic, and he's 77. Oldest president-elect in history is running in the midst of the pandemic, already serious cognitive decline. And it goes on to saying Harris will be chosen and so forth. So this was all over the place. This quartzqz.com, what happens if a president-elect dies before inauguration? Biden right now is in some serious danger due to the baggage of him and his son and his brother, all of this, stuff that eventually, when the honeymoon's over and the goons are done celebrating it to get rid of Trump, if they get rid of him, I'm not saying they are. This could be this kind of a semi-sting, and a lot of people are skeptical. And I'm kind of ambivalent right now about it, one way or the other. Q's been quiet since the 3rd, so 5 days of turmoil and no Q drops. Very fascinating. A lot of I noticed this thing when serious things are afoot in society, when people are looking to get some breadcrumbs from Q, Q's very silent. And I haven't jumped on there since before the broadcast, but the Deagle.com projections, Rents has been talking about this a lot, and I've been mentioning that, but the slated alleged depopulation keeps getting more and more, you keep getting more and more kind of clarity about these projections as the days go on. Bojo over there, locking down Britain again. There's we're supposed to go down from like 80 some odd million down to 15 or so. And so, you know, this could all be kind of doom porn to get us all thinking that we're going to be facing some sort of cataclysm, and maybe we're not. But there's enough indicators that it's a decent possibility, whether it's, you know, some asteroid that slams into the Atlantic. You know, a lot of people are tying Revelation, a great star being cast into the sea whose name was Wormwood, and so forth and so on. You know, Wormwood and Chernobyl in the I believe it was the Ukrainian language, same word. So standing with Trump now, and let's say, you know, you've got a lot of armed people showing up at counting places and so forth and so on, and you got this caravan, this InfoWars caravan that's about to start its way from Austin and go around through Tallahassee and up and through Atlanta and all this up to DC. If Trump gets ousted in typical Alinskyite fashion, anybody, you know, you see the AOC list being compiled that everybody's talking about. Prepare for sedition and treason charges and people being thrown into the gulags for supporting Trump. Even though most of the sedition and treason and everything else was happening on the quote-unquote American left part of this political spectrum, which is your demon rat party. It's basically hostile takeover of just straight, you know, low-lives, pedos. You know, crooks, you know, Bolshevik-minded type people, you know, all that stuff. The LGBT pushers, all that stuff, like the overthrow and overturn, inverting of society from good to evil, and then saying that the evil is good, and the, you know, just like the book of Isaiah talks about. And so I want to talk again about, and Biden and Kamala have already changed their Twitter profiles to President-elect and Vice President-elect. Ken saw a Twitter post that claimed the DOJ cannot take action on election crimes until 10 days past the election, and then he relates it to the 10 days of darkness quote. The angle that I've been kind of talking about the new kind of American version of quote unquote fascist right that people believe is going to come and rear its head. Right now, unfortunately, just like, you know, the founders said, I believe it was Adam said, the Constitution was designed for immoral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate for the government of any other. And so this whole kind of the paradigm of people kind of self-policing due to religious kind of, you know, ideology, and this is what keeps the streets kind of safe and keeps people having integrity in government more than the next country. When the bulwark of kind of religious ideas and moral ideas get chucked, then you're going to get a dictatorship. You know, I've told people when I called into other people's programs, probably 2 years ago, I was like, look, somebody's going to end up in camps in this country. It's either going to be the traditional Americana, kind of patriotic Americans and military vets and so forth and so on that want to at least try to keep the semblance of checks and balances, constitutional government, or the people, your black militants, your Jewish Bolsheviks, the banksters, the Bezos class, Soros class, the Democratic Party class that wants to transform and remake the society, burn it down, smash it. What you're hearing all these black militants saying, and they're even turning on the white libs that were out in the so-called BLM plaza out in front of the White House. While they're out celebrating the Biden alleged win, the BLM goons come up and start ripping on them and like, get the hell out of here. This ain't no time for celebration, and blah, 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 blah. And so, these people are going to eat their own. The woke mob, once they get the taste of flesh, they're not, you can't appease them. The gaslighting, this is, 9/11, Oklahoma City, Sandy Hook, Vegas, COVID, and now this election. But especially COVID, 9/11 and Sandy Hook, they were big deals. But the COVID, and then right on the heels of the COVID operation, this election, the amount of just pissing in your face and telling you it's raining, it's so mind-boggling. And this is really, I think it's really the resolve and these people that have deprogrammed from our Pravda, Izvestia, Xinhua media organs. It's getting so ridiculous that these people that work for these corporations, CNN, what's that, Time Warner, that runs CNN, that owns CNN, or Disney, I can't remember, but all the alphabets, and even Fox, one of the Murdoch sons, his wife, has been talking about we did it and Trump's a dictator and all this other crap. I wish, sometimes I wish Trump, if he didn't have Jerry Kushner around, that little bastard, but sometimes I wish Trump would have went full blown dictator on some of these commies, the rabble, the refuse, the dregs in our society, because they deserve it. Look what's happened to our West Coast, our Western Seaboard, all the way from Seattle to Portland to San Fran to LA, wrecked. Even Sacramento allegedly is pretty wrecked. But all these cities and this is where the Chinese are the strongest, is on our West Coast. They got Long Beach Naval, they got Chinatown in San Francisco, the hugest Chinatown. They softened up our underbelly out there on the West Coast to where now, where this thing's going to go, whether with Newsom, Pelosi's nephew, Inslee, Ted Wheeler, they're all freaking out at Ted Wheeler winning re-election, I guess, in the little commie that Bernie endorsed with the Mao skirt, the Che Guevara Mao and Stalin Lenin skirts that she wears around the little Antifa bra didn't get the nod.